If you've recently finished your project and you're heading into post-production, your composer may mention a spotting session to you. Welcome to Filmmaker Music School, where I teach directors, writers, and other filmmakers about what happens on the music side of the industry. So, a spotting session is where a composer, a sound designer, and the director typically get together and look at the film from start to finish and figure out when and where the music starts and stops, as well as why. This is a process that can take a decent amount of time, but this lays out the blueprint for the rest of post-production for you. As the edit nears a locked cut, it's a perfect time to start having these discussions. We don't need to have a final locked cut, because what we will do is make spotting notes that doesn't just have time code embedded, but they will say the music is in on the shot of Maria's face as soon as her hand touches John's cheek. So we will use visual descriptors to help us find when and where music stops, as well as time code. So if anything changes in the edit, we know exactly what is going on. This is a great time to have your temp score in place if you are using one. Talk to your composer if they want that or not, because a lot of times composers find that to be a bit of a hindrance. Other times composers find it to be very helpful. So it just kind of depends on the composer you're working with. But if you want them to hear it, now's a great time to see what you're doing. If you're working in a realm like television, temp scores are pretty much essential. The turnover time for TV is so quick that you really don't have much time to experiment with your spotting or artistic style. We had about a week to go from spotting notes to finished episode. So temp scores really did help the process speed along. Now, going into this spotting session, a general rule of thumb that works a lot of the time, not all of the time, is probably about a third of your runtime is going to be music. So if you have a 15-minute short, you're probably looking between 4 and 6 minutes of music. Now this can change depending on the style and context of the film, but generally this is kind of how we go about figuring out estimates. You can front load the movie with music and kind of lean on what we call the primacy effect to make it feel like there's more music than there actually is, which is a great way to keep budget down. But honestly, talk to your composer, because there are ways to stretch music if it's not in your budget to get custom music for the entire length of the film, which we would call wall-to-wall, from first frame to last frame. Sometimes we can reuse tracks, sometimes we can take stems, deliver stems. That again is something we do in TV a lot, is where we deliver the stems as well as the final mix. The music editor or the regular editor would have a library of tracks based on the music we delivered to create new tracks from. It really saves you time and money, ultimately. Now, these discussions you're having with the composer, you should figure out what the music is doing, why it is doing that, the emotional mood you are going for, and where the music is. If you can't describe what the music is doing or why it's doing something, you probably don't need it. Directors and composers are both really guilty of this, but don't be afraid to use silence. Silence can be incredibly powerful, and I think a composer who knows when to not compose music is actually stronger than a composer who composes so much music you don't know what to do with it. It's like art. There's positive space and negative space, and knowing when and where to bring music in is not just a dramatic choice, but it's a stylistic choice. And every composer has their own instinct on where music should be. So having these conversations with your composer in a spotting session is a great way to figure out what sort of story you're telling and why. For instance, like a Hallmark movie is going to have a lot more tiny little stingers, like, oh my god, their hands touched, here's a little spark, versus a drama which may have longer, drawn-out cues, building and development. A movie that's shot to feel like it's in the 1940s would have very different spotting than a movie that's shot to feel like it's on TikTok. I'll probably do another video on these spotting ideas, but your spotting session is a great time to discuss how you want your movie to be scored and why. The goal of your spotting session is ultimately to walk out of it with a cue sheet of all the cues that are going to be in the movie from the composer, as well as any licensed tracks you're going to use, and to understand the story you're telling musically and how all the pieces are going to relate as it comes together. A strong spotting session is going to save you time and money in post-production, because you'll be able to have an intentionally crafted and more powerful score that tells the story you're intending to tell.